Well, thank you for having me, and I like to talk about these things because I think they're meaningful, and finding meaning in today's world, it sort of keeps me getting up in the morning, and I find it very rewarding to listen to people who have close experience of applying new technologies and making our world a better place to be. You can hear from the people in the interviews, people like to save time, so they have more time for doing the things that they want to do, or save lives, or we need to be very conscious of the pursuit of happiness, I think, and health. And as an architect, we're PLP Architecture. We're quite a large company, not too far from here, and there's 220 of us, and we have a big mix of people. London is a fantastic place to have a design studio because everyone comes to London, but there's plenty of talent, and we speak 34 languages, so we come from 45 different places, and we like to talk to each other, and I think that's really where the ideas come. They don't come out of one person's head, they come out of an awareness of what's happening in the world, people contributing in all levels, and we've created a studio that kind of, where we all sit in one place and talk to each other, and that's sort of really what makes our work, and we've kind of sometimes forgotten the excitement of communication. These boys I love because they show this tremendous excitement in all the things that are possible with new technologies. And the fellow on the left is seeing something that we don't know. We'll never find out. But the guy on the right is excited for his friend, and the two of them have this sort of connection because there's this spectacle happening. So these new technologies, what do they mean to us as people and how we function? And I instead of telling you lots about technology, I'm going to talk about architecture. I'm going to do a very, very quick history of architecture. And it started with people coming together in a clearing in the forest under a tree. And this picture shows all the elements that you need to come together and collaborate and have a discussion about something. You need somewhere to sit, a little bit of climate control, some shelter, some fresh air, and coffee. That's sort of what you need to have a discussion. And we should not forget this, because it's sort of all there, And when we started evolving as an intelligent, smart species of beings, we invented some ways of making shelter. They are a type of technology that sort of have helped us make better places to protect us from the elements or to make beautiful things. Very often in architecture, there's a mixture of the different things we are trying to achieve in life, and they are aesthetic, they are cultural, they have to do with the environment, they have to do with people's well-being. And they are often connected to the financial world, or the world of religion, or the world of technology. And the input of technology has always been helping us in building buildings that wouldn't have been possible before we invented those technologies. Now, the modern movement 100 years ago used some big steps forward in psychology, in social thinking about social networks of people, and new materials, concrete and glass and steel, and created a whole new language of architecture and lots of benefits for workers. And some of my favorite modernist projects really revolve about trying to make better, healthier places for people. Better air, better light. The idea of daylight comes from that time. Making office spaces, initially we looked, and this is of course not a real situation, this is from a wonderful film, but the idea of integration of technology in the workspace it's kind of has never been not there. And workspace as an idea is about 100 years old as well. I think we were starting to make workplaces for more people some time ago. But it's really ramped up in the last maybe 10 years in a thinking of how workplace could be more productive and more efficient for the work that people are doing. And there's little evidence of it. And almost daily, if you go around, if I go around to people I work with in London, and banks and news agencies, you always find really bad workplaces. And I have no idea why this talent, those very well, highly paid people actually have to work in the places that they work in. So maybe this idea of technology will play a role in the way we think of our workplaces or our houses or our cities. And I'm not saying maybe it actually does already. We know many examples. I was, with PLP, we were involved with the design of the Edge in Amsterdam, which has become a little bit of a name, partly because somebody, Bloomberg, called it the most sustainable building in the world, which it was at the time, highest rating ever. But also they called it possibly the smartest building on the planet. And that is sort of almost left a question mark, because many new technologies were applied by a group of very, very ambitious people, the tenants, Deloitte, the developer, OVG. We have ambitions coming out of our ears sometimes. We try very hard. But it happened at a time in the Netherlands. The building was designed in 2009, 2010, when people were starting to wonder what the workplace would be like if we would live in a digital future. The building is full of technology. There are, as Josh said, 30,000 sensors everywhere. Everything is measured. It doesn't know who you are. It sort of knows there's a group of people in a space. It's not quite following you personally. But it's a building that's trying to make a workplace for collaborative work. It's a building with 5 or 6 different tenants who actually really enjoy working with each other. And the workspace is organized around a great big atrium full of daylight where people like to be. And unlike many other buildings that I've designed in the past, I've actually been to see this building since it was completed probably about 100 times, which normally is 2 or 3 times. I think that's it. So there's been an excitement about the project, and it's partly because of the workplace. It's partly because of the sustainable accreditations to the project, but it's also partly because it's trying to create a new way of working. Now, how this works, it works in many ways, but the building measures environmentally how space is used and where the daylight is best and how the lighting level should be for work. But it's also making a connection between people and their building. So people have a relationship almost with their building through their smartphone. Where they can discuss their needs, their meeting room bookings, lockers are digital. They discuss their workplace requirements with the building. The building will allocate space to people based on those requirements. And there is a layer of connectivity between people and the building. And this, of course, becomes very interesting because you can learn tremendous amounts from the way people use buildings, things that we haven't learned before. It has the potential for people to be able to influence their workspace. And it's quite well known in the cognitive sciences that people function much better if they are in an environment that they have a potential to influence. If people can move furniture around a little bit or open the window, people feel better. It increases their cognitive processes by some 25%, which is quite meaningful in the workplace. So if you have an environment that can change, you have different types of workplace settings, small cubicles with peace and quiet, large spaces in public, or little cubby holes on the right. There are these little seats with a bit of acoustic separation where you can have a telephone conversations. People will use the technology to find a workspace that's better for them. There's a lot to say about this building. In a nutshell, it overlays different types of technologies with the way people use the building. And there are big advantages, there are big savings on maintenance of the building. The building understands exactly what space is used during a day. So the cleaners have an iPad and they can see which of the spaces have been used most extensively at the end of the day, so they clean them a bit more. It measures the air qualities. It can adjust the systems based on how many people are in certain spaces. It does a lot of things. Every machine in the building is connected through the Internet of Things, the coffee making machines, the photocopier, the lockers, everything is kind of connected. Most of these things are pilots. 21 big innovations happened in the building. Some of them we don't even know about and are hidden in the ceiling. But most of these things we're keeping an eye on to see how they develop, and some interesting examples. I'm going to spend one of my remaining 3 minutes to talk about the coffee machines because I think they're so exciting. Because the coffee machines are part of the Internet of Things, and there's a little sensor that measures the beans. So if the beans run out, it sends a message to the people in Switzerland who made the coffee machine, and automatically the message gets back to the maintenance people in the building, and they come and fill the coffee beans. So I thought that's not a good idea because it should measure when the coffee beans are nearly finished, because then we can be there on time to fill the beans. And they tasked the manufacturers of the machines with this new sensor, and they went to the research department, and they're inventing this kind of new sensor that measures, blah, blah, blah. You get the story. In the meantime, 3 years of data were collected by the coffee machines, and data analytics shows very perfectly when the beans are running out on each of the different machines in the building. So actually knowing the data from a long period actually helps us to understand things. There are many success stories. You can find them on the internet. Absenteeism, apparently it's down by 45%. I don't know how it's measured. Employee satisfaction, I keep an eye on that myself. I like to go there and talk to people. What people are telling me is that they enjoy being in those in a building that has the technology. They enjoy being in the building that's very sustainable. After 3 years, people have gotten used to these issues, and actually what people like most now is the experience of the building. They like the technology to be quiet, running in the background. They enjoy the collaborative feeling of the place. I was going to talk a little bit about cities. I think Runa is going to talk to you more. One notion, this is Andreas Gursky's wonderful photograph of the Amazon warehouse in Arizona. If you go quite close up to the photograph, you can see that it's a total mess. There's no order to all the books, different types of books next to each other, guitar cases, coffee machines, and people can only really find objects because they're digitally logged. And this is a little pointer. It makes you think about cities of the future. Do we need to know where everything is exactly, because we have different layers of intelligence that help us do that. Buildings on the whole are focused more on people these days. Whereas in my career as an architect for 25 years, we talked about buildings as making square meters and cost and urban scenarios and architecture. But now, number one criterion for well-functioning office buildings is people. People's happiness. If you keep your people happy, they will be more productive and they'll be working more efficiently. An example of a space is our building for Sky in London, which is a great big massive open space where 3,000 people basically work in the same fire compartment. It's the biggest in the world. But the reality is that it's very open. People like to be in a crowd of people, find their spaces where they can do their work best, and technology is incredibly helpful in creating that space. So the notion for the edge in Amsterdam, for me, after talking to people recently about the 3 years, what do you think? A lot of people answer that what they like most about the building is the feeling that everyone is in there together, and the atrium is the place where people will gather, where people feel their home. And somehow that is not so different from the first step of architecture. Thank you very much.